My mom and sister spent my entire childhood forgetting, denying, and rewriting my trauma. But this trip they looked me in the eye, told me my allergies, my memories, and my pain never happened. And now I don't know if I'm finally seeing who they really are. I always thought that once I got out, once I finally escaped the chaos we grew up in, everything would make sense. That the pain would stay behind with the versions of us who survived it. But the truth is, distance doesn't erase anything. It just changes the shape of the wounds. My family and I lived through an upbringing that most people wouldn't believe unless they'd crawled through something similar. Violence, addiction, instability, fear, it rewired all of us in different ways. For years, my mother and my sister were my definition of strength. My mom survived a catastrophic immigration failure that left her with nothing, almost homeless, then somehow clawed her way back into building a career she'd sacrificed my whole life. My sister grew up witnessing the same things I did, but she didn't have the same escape hatch I eventually found. When I moved to the US to finally get my foot in the door with real work, she was still at home when our mom went through drug withdrawals, so severe, she became suicidal. And my sister, the one who used to be the protective older sibling, slowly slid into addiction herself. I never knew what to do. I was barely surviving my own life. I had finally landed my first real internship after years of failure, and I was terrified that if I went back home, I'd lose everything I'd worked for. I knew deep down that if I stayed focused, if I actually broke the cycle of poverty, I could eventually take care of all of us. So I stayed. And then COVID happened. Borders shut down. Flights became impossible. All I could do was sit thousands of miles away piecing together fragments of disaster through patchy phone calls. But somehow, against all odds, they recovered. Both of them. My mom held onto sobriety. My sister fought through the darkness and came out the other side with two daughters who are the only light I've ever seen shine that brightly in our family. Now when I visit, I bring gifts, clothes, toys, little things that feel like bandages for old wounds. I buy groceries, carry the trash out, fix whatever needs fixing. I try to make their lives easier in all the ways I couldn't back when everything was falling apart. This last trip broke me in a way I wasn't prepared for, and I'm still sitting here replaying the whole thing in my mind wondering what the hell just happened. A few months ago, during my previous visit, my sister randomly brought up my nut allergy out of nowhere and said she didn't believe it ever happened. I remember freezing, totally blindsided. She said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Her boyfriend even chimed in, sounding unsure, saying he didn't think someone would just make something like that up. I was confused, uncomfortable, but the conversation moved too fast for me to react properly. I brushed it off as one of those weird moments that happens in families. But this trip, she doubled down. Hard. We were sitting in the living room when she suddenly blurted, "Your walnut allergy never happened. Mom and I were talking about how you just invent stories and we can't figure out why." She said it with this bizarre confidence, like she'd caught me in some elaborate lie. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't just disbelief. There was mockery in her voice, like she was ridiculing me. I said, "You realize I've avoided walnuts my whole life because of that allergy? Why would I do that if it wasn't real?" I could hear my own voice shaking. When I was little, my mom told me I had a severe reaction to the second walnut I ever ate, that I had anaphylaxis and had to be rushed to the hospital. I was a kid. Of course, I believed her. I grew up terrified of walnuts. I never questioned it. Even in high school, we didn't keep walnuts at home. Not once. Only after I moved out did I start noticing walnuts in the pantry when I'd visit, and even then, I never touched them. It was hardwired into me that they could hurt me. But my sister kept going, almost gleefully. She said, I remember you were such a baby about nuts. You always asked me if my banana bread had nuts in it. You said your mouth itched, and I told you to get over it." She laughed while she said it. That's when it clicked, she remembered. She remembered I avoided nuts, remembered the reactions, remembered me being scared. She remembered everything, she just didn't care. And now, for some reason, she and my mom had rewritten the entire history in their minds and decided I'm the one who made it all up. It hurt in a way I didn't expect. Not because of the allergy itself, but because it felt like they were erasing my lived experience, like they were calling me delusional to my face. And it wasn't even done with concern or curiosity, but with mockery. With this undercurrent of, "We've talked about you behind your back, and we agree something is wrong with you." The moment they both started insisting my memories were fake, something in me cracked open. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone. Mocking. Dismissive. Like I was some unreliable narrator in my own life. I could feel this cold wave rising in my chest, the kind that comes when you're suddenly 7 years old again, and realizing nobody is coming to stand up for you. My mom walked in right as my sister was finishing her little performance, and instead of grounding the conversation like I expected, she jumped right in. Yeah, other stories of yours are made up too. Like the one about you getting lost at Disneyland. There's no way something like that happened. I would remember. Hearing that from her felt like a punch. I've carried that story with me for as long as I can remember. Whether parts of it are fuzzy or exaggerated, fine. I was a toddler. But the way they said it, it wasn't curiosity or confusion. It was accusation. It was them standing over me, two adults tag-teaming to erase entire pieces of my history simply because they didn't fit neatly into their narratives. My sister wasn't even born during the allergy incident, yet she felt entitled to weigh in as if her lack of memory was proof that I fabricated my own medical history. My mom, who should remember, just shrugged and sided against me. And suddenly all those old feelings I thought I'd buried years ago came rushing back. The loneliness, the emotional neglect, the way my childhood was always something we survived rather than lived. They kept pressing. You just invent things. You exaggerate everything. You've always done this. It was like they were rewriting my whole life right in front of me, and I was supposed to just accept it. I tried to defend myself. I tried to bring logic into it. Why would I avoid walnuts for my entire life if nothing happened? Why would I live in fear of anaphylaxis if nobody ever told me I had one? What possible reason would a kid have to make that up? But logic didn't matter. They weren't listening. They weren't even trying. They had already decided I was the problem. The gaslighting was so intense I felt the room shrinking. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, and I felt this humiliating sting in my eyes as tears started forming. I haven't cried in front of either of them as an adult, not once. I've always been the one who stayed strong, who pushed forward, who kept everything together while they battled addiction and chaos. I became the stable one, the resilient one. And now here I was breaking down over walnuts and Disneyland, and they were still looking at me like I was ridiculous. I finally choked out. Can you please just try to understand why this is upsetting? Can you just acknowledge how it feels to have your entire childhood dismissed? My mom followed me into the hallway, softening her voice like she thought that alone would fix things. We just have to agree to disagree, she said, like this was some petty argument about a movie plot and not the foundation of my lived reality. But she didn't want a mutual agreement. She wanted me to concede, to quietly swallow the hurt and let them rewrite the past so none of them had to confront their own roles in it. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend I was fine while they tore pieces of my identity away. All I wanted, truly, was a bit of empathy. A moment of, hey, memories get messy. Let's figure this out together. But instead I got ridicule, dismissal, and two people I loved looking me in the eyes and telling me my life didn't happen the way I remember it. When I got home and finally worked up the courage to message them, the responses I got were colder than anything I expected. My sister wrote a single paragraph basically telling me I blew everything out of proportion, that I embarrassed her in front of her boyfriend, and that my crying was manipulative. My mom echoed her, saying she was too exhausted to revisit the conversation and that I needed to let go of things that clearly never happened. Reading those messages felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I wasn't even asking them to agree with my memories. I was asking them to acknowledge my feelings, to understand why it hurt, to show even a sliver of empathy. But instead they doubled down, painting me as dramatic, unstable, impossible to talk to. I kept rereading their texts, wondering if I had really gone crazy, if somehow decades of avoiding walnuts and an entire childhood story could just be fiction. But the part that gutted me wasn't the memory itself. It was the way they reacted. The mocking tone. The laughter. The refusal to even consider my perspective. The instant turning of the tables the moment I expressed hurt, as if only their pain ever matters and mine is always an inconvenience. My whole life I've been the one holding everything together, emotionally, financially, practically. I'm the one who sends money, buys groceries, shows up with gifts, helps with chores, plays with the kids, tries to make everyone's lives easier. And despite all the trauma we went through growing up, I never expected that the moment I cracked, they'd treat me like an annoyance to be shut down. I told them exactly that I felt dismissed, minimized, treated like my voice meant nothing. My sister replied, "You just want us to validate lies. That's not happening." My mom chimed in with, "I don't remember anything like that, so it clearly didn't happen. You need to stop being sensitive." And that was the moment something in me just broke. Because how do you argue with people who rewrite history the second it becomes inconvenient? How do you reason with people who weaponize forgetfulness and call it truth? How do you talk to family who think your pain is negotiable? I realized then that the version of them I've carried in my head, my heroes, the survivors of our shared nightmare, doesn't exist anymore. Maybe they never did. Maybe I wanted so badly to believe we all made it out that I ignored the fact that they stayed stuck, and now I'm the one paying for it. I didn't respond after that. I couldn't. I felt small, destabilized, like the fragile kid I used to be, the one they ignored, dismissed, and told to get over it. And for the first time in my adult life, I let myself say out loud what I've been terrified to admit. I don't think they actually see me as a person, only as a prop in their story. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours, rereading their messages over and over until the words stopped feeling real. Every sentence from them made my stomach twist, like I had slipped into some upside-down version of my own family. My mom telling me to stop playing victim. My sister saying no person reacts this way. Both of them insisting I was making drama and hounding them when they were the ones yelling, swearing, mocking, and standing over me the night before. I kept asking myself if I had hallucinated at all, or if they truly believed this was normal behavior. For a moment, I genuinely wondered if I was losing my mind. That's how disorienting gaslighting is. You start questioning the most obvious details of your own experience. I didn't yell. I didn't swear. I cried. And yet somehow, in their rewritten version of the evening, I was the aggressor. I was the problem. I was the dramatic, unstable one who took things too personally and blew everything out of proportion. But what was I supposed to do? Sit there silently while two people I love, two people who claimed to love me, told me my memories weren't real? That parts of my childhood, pieces of my identity, the foundation of my relationship with my own body, like my allergy, were fabricated? That the stories I've carried my whole life, stories they told me, were suddenly inventions. They acted like I was insane for caring. Like they weren't the ones who blindsided me and then piled on when I reacted like a human being. I keep thinking about how many times in my life they have come to me saying they were hurt by something I said or did, big things, small things, misunderstandings, emotional missteps, and how I always apologized immediately. I never dismissed their feelings. I never told them they were wrong or dramatic or imagining things. I took accountability even when it stung, even when I felt misunderstood. I tried. I cared. And somehow, now that the roles are reversed, they can't offer me even 1 ounce of the grace I have shown them for years. What really guts me is how quickly they weaponized my trauma and my vulnerability. Get over your childhood trauma, like we have. As if trauma is something you can check off like a chore. As if they weren't the architects of half the wounds I carry. As if I didn't spend years pulling myself out of the same darkness that swallowed them whole. Their complete lack of empathy crushed me. Not disagreement. Not confusion. Not misremembering. Lack of empathy. Lack of care. Lack of interest in my pain, my experience, my humanity. And now I'm sitting here wondering how I move forward from this. Wondering if I even can. Because how do you rebuild trust with people who refuse to acknowledge your lived reality? Who dismiss your emotions as drama? Who reinterpret your hurt as an attack? Who rewrite shared history to make themselves feel comfortable? How do I keep walking into a family system where compassion only moves in one direction, toward them, never toward me? I'm questioning everything. My childhood, my relationship with my mother, my bond with my sister, even my own instincts. Was I wrong to react the way I did? Was I truly overreacting? Or was I finally just breaking under the weight of years of being minimized and ignored? And now the hardest question of all, am I justified in stepping back or completely stepping away from them? Because right now I don't feel safe with them. I don't feel loved by them. I don't even feel seen. I don't know what to do. I don't know what the right answer is. But I know that staying in a family dynamic where I am constantly invalidated is breaking me. And at some point, I have to choose myself.